Hello, everybody, and welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show, the podcast for heavy hitters. I am so excited today. This is Jeff Schechter, aka Shecky, and I'm here with just my business partner today to have a very, very frank conversation about turnkey companies and to talk about some of the issues that we have seen in the marketplace recently. So I want to say welcome, Jack Gibson, one of my good buddies and my business partner. How you doing, Jack?
Hey, Shecky. Definitely excited about this topic.
Yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover. So today's episode, we are going to talk about what to look for, some of the pitfalls, but mostly to understand how to select the right turnkey company. So stay tuned. We've got a really, really great show for you. Welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show, the podcast for heavy hitters. Two men, one mission. It's time to build your empire. Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the High Return Real Estate Show. My name is Jeff Schechter, aka Shecky, and I'm here with Mr. Jack Gibson. And today we are going to talk about how to select a proper turnkey company. This is really the subject of just a ton of controversy because there's so much, sort of different definitions about what turnkey means. And there's so many investors that are out there that are really looking for sort of that, that golden egg, the best way to find a company that they can have a solid, safe investment where they're really getting good service. And I will tell you that from what we've seen, it does require a pretty good amount of vetting and a pretty good, just about as much due diligence on the turnkey company itself as on the property that you're actually analyzing. So with that in mind, I want to start off, Jack, by saying, from your perspective, and I know we've kind of touched on this conversation before, but what would you say is your definition of turnkey? What does it mean to you?
Well, Shecky, I think this has changed for me just over the past couple of years being in this space. Before I would have said, turnkey company is a company that pretty much does the acquisition, the rehab, and then places the property management for you and does and controls the whole process. And the investor could buy in at any point in that process. And then, for example, they could buy in while the property or before the property even gets rehabbed, and then they could just wait for it to get completed, right? But because, for example, the turnkey company is doing all of that process for you, then therefore they're a turnkey company. And I think recent events in the marketplace, especially with a very large and very well-known turnkey company, has kind of proven out that necessarily isn't turnkey, and that sometimes doesn't always bode well for the investors. So I think the new definition that I've got of turnkey, Shecky, is, look, it's a finished property. We've done the acquisition, the rehab, repairs, inspection, warranty. You're buying a finished property, and it's either rent ready or it's already been leased up. But until it's actually hit that final stage where it's crossed the finish line, all repairs, all rehab has been addressed, I don't think that you can really call it turnkey, Shecky, because you can't just walk in and, turn the key. That's the whole point of turnkey, right? Is that the investor can walk up to the property, boom, turn the key, boom, and he's got a cash flow producing asset right then and there. So, what are your thoughts?
No, I mostly agree with you. I like you, my definition has changed a little bit too, just also being in this space. And I think it's easy for investors and providers in this space to kind of move that needle a little bit on what the definition really is based on, what processes are being done. In my mind, the way I look at it is pretty much everything. In other words, the company itself that you are relying on, whether it's us or anybody else, is monitoring and handling every aspect of the process all the way through, including the service after the sale, which in my, obviously is the property management. Because let's face it, you could have a great rehab, you could even place a great tenant, but the proof happens in the pudding over time. People are buying turnkey properties because they're using just the typical buy and hold strategy. So buy and hold, only the first portion of it is buy. Hold is the other portion. And in the hold is where the money is being made. It's where the cash flow is coming from. So unless there's also a good property management piece in place to service the investors and is also under the control somehow of that turnkey company, I don't feel like that fully defines turnkey. I come from a background of digital marketing, and we oftentimes had a term called DFY. It's the opposite of DIY, DFY being done for you. And look, we live in a busy time and people have other responsibilities. And the reason why an investor is going to use a turnkey company, it's again, not for everybody, is because they're in a position that they've got busy jobs, they've got lives, they've got families, they've got other responsibilities, and they want to own rental properties. They want to own good, solid rental properties that will perform, but they don't have the time or the inclination, and certainly don't have the inclination to learn the expertise necessary to be able to control all those processes. Now, Jack, you and I both know that in a lot of the more popular real estate forums, the biggest argument against turnkey is you'll get people that say, well, you could just do the BRRRR strategy yourself, BRRR, like buy, rehab, repair, rent, rinse, repeat. And I don't even always remember what all the RRRs stand for. But basically the idea there being is that you go into a market, like maybe a nice solid market in the Midwest, like where we are, and you say, I can, the price to rent ratios here are good. I can buy a property at a discount. I can buy it from a wholesaler. I can get with a contractor. I can do all this. And I can, quote unquote, force appreciation. Okay. And when they really go through that process and understand buying one at a time, dealing with contractors, looking at surprises that may happen in a rehab, still trying to find their own renters, and then still finding a property management company that's worth their salt, I say you're welcome to it. Go ahead and try that. But there's nothing in that equation that is even remotely where you can see DFY from there. Not even remotely. It's a lot of work and a lot of heartache. So the people that use a turnkey, whether it's us or anybody else, are ones that understand the value of what that company brings to the table. So let's thin slice this. That's the whole point of this podcast, is to say, what is it specifically where they bring expertise to the table and do something for you? So here's what to look for. Let's start at the very, very, very beginning, right? If a turnkey company is boots on the ground and they are not just buying from wholesalers who, anybody that comes along that can peddle a property, but they have their own marketing in place and their own way to acquire properties, whether that's tax sales, distress sellers, whatever, but they know the market. They know what properties need to be purchased at in order to bring good value. That right there is number one. So in my mind, number one is your turnkey company, whoever you've decided to use, ask them if they have their own acquisition team, and does that acquisition team have an intimate knowledge of the market in which they work. So to me, that's number one, right? Number two, Jack, because I'll ask you more to go into this one, because I know you're all about it, is a turnkey company is, to an extent, they could be looked at as a flipper, but they're not really a flipper, because during the period of rehab, they actually own the property. There's not an assigned contract there. They're taking the full responsibility for ownership of that property. And I know you're involved in a lot of that process and the acquisitions for our company. So why don't you speak to that?
Well, I guess when I think of a flipper, I'm thinking of somebody who is basically, buying a property, fixing it up, and then, they're selling it for maximum market price they can possibly get, and then they're out. It's like, okay, so you made your money and then you're done. And what you said in its terms of adding on to what I kind of define turnkey as, which I totally agree, is the PM piece is a critical part. So you're also still monitoring and, I would say, in a way, controlling what's happening post sale. So in other words, it's not, hey, Mr. Investor, we found this property and we fixed it up and we got it all repaired and we're selling it to you, and then you'll never hear from us again and we're out, right? Like if you have any issues after you buy it, don't ever come back to us, right? And that's where most flippers, that's what they do. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's correct. That's just not turnkey. Turnkey is, as you said, acquisitions, rehab, tenant placement, ongoing property management, and also monitoring the property management so that you're making sure that the investor is taken care of after the sale. That's a huge part of it. And I know, Shecky, that a lot of people's that are out there that are kind of the critics or, whatever you want to call them, they're certainly not for turnkey, is their argument is that the turnkey companies are extracting most of the equity, out of the property. And, that certainly is true. The turnkey company that's how they're capturing the profit by buying at a lower price and then selling at a higher price, right? And capturing that equity. But at the same time, the amount of value that they are offering and providing for that captured equity that they're taking on them, that they get to capture for themselves, far outpaces, what the do-it-yourself investor is giving up. So I know you're just chomping at the bit here to probably insert something.
No, I agree with you. And I think it's incumbent upon us to impress upon the investor community really some of the nitty-gritty details that a turnkey company does for them. Because I think, when you sit back in your armchair or you're hanging out at your computer and, just expecting the world to be served to you from a standpoint of just, hey man, just serve me up a great property that I can make $12 bazillion on. I don't think necessarily always the investors that are looking at turnkey understand all that goes into it. And this is why it's important to vet a good turnkey company. So for example, if you go to the second part in that, after it's been acquired, let's look at what's been acquired. Does this property have any tax liens on it? Were the tax liens cleared? That's a big issue, right? Like, is it going to have any, you can have any taxation issues, you can have any problems with deeds when you go to close on the property. Are they running their own rehab crews? Are they doing enough volume to create economies of scale with those rehab crews? In other words, can 55-gallon drums of paint, well, actually they're 5-gallon drums of paint, but can gallons of paint get moved from one property to the other? Can leftover sheetrock and carpeting get moved to the other? Are those processes standardized all the way across the board? Because it's a lot different doing things that way than just one property at a time and outsourcing something to a contractor that's just doing one job for you. When you're running your own crews, you can create some serious economies of scale, and you can also insist that your crews do things to your standards and also do things to a standard that's going to benefit both parties. And here's what I mean by both parties, both the turnkey provider and the investor. So think about it. There's two components to this. One is a warranty. So there are, other providers in our space that do, sometimes they'll have specials, like they'll do guaranteed rents. And, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but I find it to be a little bit fluffy because it's just sort of, you're not really controlling the market. In our case, rather than doing that, we just say we're proud of our work and we give a 1-year warranty on everything. And there are some great turnkey players out there that do give warranties on their work. So I want to encourage you to look for those. And also, let's talk about inspections, because that sort of seems to be the thorn in the side of almost every investor and almost every turnkey company. So, obviously we've heard, Jack, we've heard horror stories about, lots of turnkey companies running hard in the other direction when the investor mentions the word inspection. So that's pretty telling, right? Then there's obviously been stuff going the other way too, where you can get inspectors that get a little bit over aggressive and go like, well, the property's in really great shape, but heck, we saw an ant crawling across the street 3 doors down, so now we're recommending pest control, and they can get a little bit out of hand with stuff too. But we are of the opinion that a good, solid, basic inspection that covers all the major components of the house is a benefit to both parties. And here's what I mean. In our case, because we're providing a 1-year warranty on every property, we absolutely want a third-party inspector to come in. It's not us. We want a third party to keep our crews honest. Why? Because, Jack, you and I, in our company, we've got our butts on the line. We're saying like, hey, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And if you didn't have a good rehab, or there's something major wrong with the plumbing or the electrical or any one of the major systems of the house, it's on us. Right. So we don't want to have that cost of the exposure. So for us, we want to be able to see an inspection to make sure that everything is okay. And it's a way to make sure that, when we pay our crews and we pay them good money, that they're providing good value and doing a good job for us. The other piece of it is more obvious, and obviously it puts the investor in a position where they now have third-party proof that the property is in good condition. Notwithstanding the warranty, but they obviously get that too, but they can see like, yes, everything is working and functioning the way it should. So you got something you want to add?
Well, yeah, I think, there's 2 parts and 2 sides. I see, both sides to the inspection process, having been an investor, myself originally and not a turnkey provider, right? I started as an investor into turnkey. And then, as I built my portfolio, decided to, partner with you and start this company. So I see the fact that, yes, it is important as an investor to get an inspection. I see the other side, which is now our side, where, inspector comes in and there's a tenant in the property and, working around the tenant, and they're hiring, who knows what kind of inspection company. And, it's just, it can be a real hassle. So on both sides, it can be a hassle too, and
Sure.
They can also over inspect a property based on the class that it's in, a C-class property. If you get the wrong inspector coming in that has these A-class standards, it just doesn't match up. And then, well, the prospective buyer, the investor, is going to, want to put all this extra money into the property that is really not necessary for the tenant class. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is why we order inspections third party, Shecky, is that we have multiple crews, right? And that's the economy of scale. We can basically, we're not held ransom by one company or one particular crew. So we can get competitive bids because these crews know that they've got somebody right behind them that'll replace them in a heartbeat if they raise their prices too much on us. And that's our way of keeping prices down for the end investor. But to make the final point on the inspection, Shecky, is that we're able to keep those crews in check as far as the quality control that they deliver to us. Without that inspection, you and we have no idea, unless we go through and just inspect every property ourselves, and we don't have that expertise, right? That's not our lane, so to speak. We need somebody else with that expertise to go in and keep those crews honest and accountable so that we know that we are warranting a good quality product and that we can stamp the high return real estate, approval on that property and be able to, send it out to our investor network and say, this has our name on it. We're proud of it. And we'll stand behind it for a 1-year period of time of where we'll take care of everything on that warranty, no matter what happens. So,
right.
That's why, Shecky, when they ask us, well, how do we know, like, who's the, why, like you got that question today, like, how do we know that the inspector that you're getting is going to do a good job, right? Well, there you go. We want a good job. We have to have it. And that's why.
Yeah, we have to have it for our processes. And so, and again, it should be said, I mean, look, we do a good job, and I don't necessarily want to turn this podcast into a commercial for us. There's some really great other turnkey companies out there in other markets besides us. We're predominantly in Indianapolis right now, and, but if you wanted to go invest in other cities, what we want to do is make sure that the listeners out there understand that there are certain things that if you're not seeing these things, you should be worried. You should be walking away, because as Jack had alluded to, we're in a situation right now where there's been some significant impact in some Midwest markets that are just sort of beyond oversight on the part of the providers. And I don't want to start airing dirty laundry and naming names, but there's some investors that have gotten burned, and I personally hate to see that happen. But secondly, in this world of social media and forums and things like that, there's very much a herd mentality. Like when most of us are on Facebook, or, you get on there and somebody makes one comment, and then the next guy or gal goes, yeah. And the next one goes, yeah. And what about this? And what about that? And eventually it just becomes this dog pile. And I don't find that there's necessarily anything wrong with it. It's just the nature of the way human beings are. We have a herd, we have a pack mentality. So we all want to belong to a group. But what ends up happening is, in cases like this, everybody jumps into this group like, wow, now we're a whole bunch of victims all together. And being the victim, from a standpoint of an entrepreneur, is never a good position to be in. So, we want to give people moving forward the opportunity to be proactive and to be, look, you're an investor. We can do everything we can on our side to put you in the best situation to have a good investment opportunity. All right. And that's what any good turnkey company will do. But at the end of the day, you still have to do your own due diligence. And I know people may not like what I'm about to say, but God damn it, you got to take responsibility for yourself. You can't just jump into a group and go like, hey, I'm just going to be part of this victim and just say, yeah. And everybody licks their wounds. What does that solve? You've got to be proactive, and you got to know how to do it better next time. If you are one of these people that are listening right now, and we're part of some of, what we're alluding to with some of these problems. Look, I'm sorry it happened, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But at the same time, it's time to take responsibility, learn from the mistakes, learn how to fix it, learn how to do things better. And that was the whole point of us doing this podcast, to say, here's the things, here's the basic benchmarks for using a turnkey company. So I'm sorry to go on such a long rant and soapbox there, but I just feel like it needed to be said.
At the end of the day, I mean, I subscribe to Shecky that, to be successful in life, you have to take 100% responsibility of everything that happens to you in all decisions that you make. And sometimes that's a tough pill to swallow. And when I bought an 11 unit apartment complex. I didn't have it inspected. I took the word of the property manager. He said it was in good shape. And it turned out that, he ended up, I'm pretty confident he was stealing from me once I finally got a new property manager in, and it just, the books didn't add up the same way.
Yeah.
And I had to put another, $60,000-$70,000 into the property over, the next year. And it was tough. Like, that hurt. But now I've got a nice cash flowing asset that's worth more than I've put into it. Property manager has turned the whole ship around and got everything, taken care of and repaired, and the tenants are happy, and I feel very good about the product And it just was a huge learning lesson on how to go about the process of buying. So I'm not blaming the person who sold it to me. I mean, I think, yes. Did she know what she was doing? Yes. I don't think that I would not call her ethical in terms of how she went about selling me the property. However, if I take the whole philosophy, if that I take 100% responsibility of everything that I do and everything that happens to me, then I'm not blaming anybody. I'm blaming this guy right here. And I learn from it, and I'm going to get better, and I'm going to get stronger, tougher, wiser, and I'm going to capitalize on that down the road. So I know who you're alluding to as well, Shecky. There's a lot of investors that are in a very bad way. And I know and I feel for them, and I want them to get their situation taken care of. And they're going to learn from this, and they're going to definitely be smarter as they go about building, their future portfolio. And, yeah.
Right. So some of these people didn't know what to look for. And the whole point of this podcast is what to look for and what to run away from. So now that we've covered basically going through the whole process, and we even talked about the handoff and property management, and having that company also controlling the property management aspect. So you're talking about the entire life cycle of the property. That's what they're delivering to you, because let's face it, if the property management is under their control, then that property management company is set up to keep investors happy. If it's an outside property management company, then that outside property management company is basically a for-profit company, isn't it? Right? So in other words, that has to stand on their own. They never sold you the property. That means every time there's a toilet call in the middle of the night, or a hole in a sheetrock or something that needs to be replaced at a tenant turn, you're paying some pretty significant markup to that outside property management company, because that's how they make a living, right? Yes, Jack.
I want to make sure that we're very clear to our listeners that there are very good turnkey companies out there that don't do the property management in-house and don't control it, and they have a great partnership with a third party, or they do outsource it, and it works very well. So I want to make sure that we don't tell the listeners, hey, if your turnkey company doesn't have it all in-house, they're terrible, or anything like that. I also want to say, if they don't have a warranty on their property, look, that's a value add. It's not to say that they're bad, right? These are just things that you want to look for, that if you're missing maybe all of those things, right, and you're buying a property before it's even finished, counting on them to rehab the property and finish it to completion, and you're out of state and you can't monitor and all that, that could be a situation where you're setting yourself up for a code red alert. This could be potentially dangerous. It may work out really, really well, but it's also could be risky. So you just got to be careful.
Yeah, and good point. And like I said, there's good providers. I get a little bit passionate sometimes, sometimes a little too passionate. But the last thing that I want to cover is documentation. So one of the things that I find, and I don't want to make any accusations, because there are some investors that are really good about this. And honestly, there are some investors that are just kind of lazy. So from a standpoint of looking at a turnkey company, this is some of the documentation that you should be asking them for upfront. So let's cover this. There's a whole bunch of them. One is, obviously, you're going to be signing a purchase agreement. That's the starting contract, to say, I agree to buy this property at these terms. So you should, even if you're not an attorney, you don't even necessarily have to send it to your attorney. You can if you want to, but you should get a sample contract from them to say, what are the terms of your purchase? What am I looking at? What does it come with? Does it come with a warranty? When are we closing? What am I responsible for closing costs? All that kind of stuff. There's not anything in there that's scary. It's just nice to be able to review that before you actually go and sign on the dotted line. And I'm not going to sit here and give all these warnings about all the stuff that should be in there or shouldn't be in there. I'm just saying it's a comfort level. So I think you got to look at a purchase agreement. If they're offering a warranty like we do, ours is written. So, hey, can I get a copy of it? Can I review exactly what's covered and what's not? Because typically that's part and parcel of the contractual agreement that you are going to have with that turnkey company. Are they providing before and after pictures? I mean, just some visual evidence of what the property looked like before they rehabbed it and what does it look like now. It's, I don't find that to be as important as people make it out to be, but even just half a dozen pictures, just some visual evidence that it's done and the work was done is good. And some sort of printout or even if it was handwritten, whatever, but just some sort of listing of what actually was rehabbed on that property. Because as you know, Jack, we get properties in all different kinds of conditions. Some of them need very little. They need a little coat of paint and just to clean up and a set of blinds or something, but everything is working really, really well and it inspects well and we have no problems putting a warranty on it. We, maybe only needs a couple $1,000s worth of stuff. All the way to the other end of the spectrum where it's almost like a full gut job and everything in that property needs to be replaced. And we've done everything in between, but you as the investor should be asking, can you just give me the list? What did you guys do to the property? I don't think that's asking too much. And of course, we already talked about this, but can you actually get a copy of the inspection that was done by the third-party inspector? You want to be able to see what's on there. And here's the interesting thing, the kicker. If indeed that inspection showed up any problems, do you have some sort of, even after the rehab, sometimes there's little things that come up and surprises, do you have some sort of validation or documentation that those final items that needed to be addressed after inspection were cured as a result of the rehab team seeing those things on the inspection as well? So again, it's more just about solid documentation. There's really nothing in there that, if a turnkey company was doing all this stuff for you, if you ask them for any of that stuff, they should not have any problems showing you that. So again, I want to reiterate, Jack, what you said. It doesn't necessarily, if they don't have all of that and every single one of those ducks lined up in a row, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad turnkey company. It just means that it's time to raise an eyebrow. It's maybe time to take a second look. Like what is it on? Why wouldn't they have that? What am I missing here? It's what we're trying to give you today is just the things that you're going to look for and just little touch points that might be cause for concern. So as you move forward as a turnkey investor, you're feeling good about who you're doing business with. Anything you want to add to that, Jack?
Oh, that's great. I'm good.
I'm on a roll.
You're on a roll.
All right, so let me finish this off. One last thing. So on a roll. There are turnkey companies some of them are just obviously, posers, they're turnkey companies just selling or they're, quote unquote consultants for somebody else behind the scene. And I'm using the quote marks with my hands when I say consultants, or they're actually the owners of the company or employees of that company where you are able to get really solid investing insights and advice from those people. Where it's like, hey, look, this one's in this kind of a neighborhood. This one would probably fit with what your investment goals are. And you're actually having real conversations with this company about what your needs are and finding out both from your side and from their side, if indeed what you are trying to do matches with their processes and the kind of end product that we provide. Because I will be the first to say, we are not, as a turnkey owner, we're not out there to sell everybody every property that's out there. Mm-hmm. We have a certain product that we deliver, and it works for a certain segment of the buy and hold marketplace. And there's a certain kind of investor that's going to love what we do. And there, frankly, there's a certain kind of investor that is just, it's not the right fit for them. And that's totally okay. So again, I think one of those red flags is if you're talking to somebody that somehow feels like they want to be all things to all people, because it's not possible to do in this business. There's just way too many moving parts. So I think that's one of the things you need to look for is, are you in alignment with what they're doing? And are they asking you questions too that would determine if indeed they're in alignment with you? It's definitely a two-way street. There has to be open communication. Last thing I want to say is kind of related to property management, but I feel like it's more like the handoff. So one of the things we noticed in our business, and we started seeing people complaining about in other forums and maybe talking to some of our competitors, was really a good communication flow between what's going on, out there in the field and, what the investor is seeing on their side 7 states away. And one of the big gaps that we saw was in the closing process. So sometimes, a sale gets made and stuff gets shuffled off to a title company, and the investor is just sitting there going, well, what the heck is next? Like, do I get insurance, or, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to wire funds to the title company, whatever? So another nice thing, not mandatory, but another nice thing to look for is, does the turnkey company do a good enough job of customer service that there's somebody on their team, like a concierge or whatever you want to call it, or customer happiness person, it's a very common term these days, to take the investor through the closing process in a smooth way? And is there somebody on their team that can help them go through that closing process so that they're not sitting out there left hanging with a bunch of questions about what's supposed to happen next? And then from there, a smooth handoff to the property management people, where again, there's contracts that you can review, there's copies of leases you can review, and all the documentation is available to you, and it's just one big smooth flow. And again, there's a lot of moving parts to that. It's not always easy, I will tell you, as a turnkey owner, to deliver that perfectly every time, but those are the kinds of things you should look for. So, if you're seeing that with your turnkey company, great. I would say that's a really, really great company to be doing business with. If you, after listening to this podcast, and you start seeing, well, gosh, I've been having conversation with some turnkeys and not really getting that, and you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, that's good. You should be feeling uncomfortable. And as you know, Jack, I'm probably a little bit more on the woo-woo spiritual side than most, but I go a lot based on feeling. If something just doesn't feel right, then I just don't do it. Even if the numbers look good. And you can look at numbers all day long with properties that are supposedly going to have this amazing ROI, and look at this, and it's double digits, and it's, not the 1% rule, but it's the 2% rule, and blah. You have all that stuff going on, blah. If it doesn't feel right, then your body's telling you something. So yeah, I know you want to add to that.
No, I just think that was perfect, and we've given them a lot to think about on this one particular podcast.
Yeah.
So, hey, so everybody, if you're looking for a good turnkey company to work with, we love your consideration. Take a look at our website. It's been it's pretty much brand new. www.highreturnrealestate.com. You can book a call with our most amazing investor concierge, Nicole, and she will walk you through available properties and look at your goals and discuss with you all of our processes and what we do to make sure that we're vetting properties and making sure we're delivering a really high quality product to you that you can cash flow for years to come. So go to that site, take a look around, book a call right there, and we'll definitely help you get started towards that. And again, if you don't ever do business with us, and you got value out of this, and you end up vetting out a different turnkeys in different markets, that's awesome. We just want to make sure that we're helping to protect your investment capital so that you're not in a situation where you're in a bad way, like what we've seen with several hundred people over the last couple of weeks. So with that, Shecky, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add the whole theme to all of this is, you find a good turnkey company, great, us or anybody else, but there's an old saying that I think rings true: trust, but verify.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Hey, everybody, go to iTunes if you don't mind, or Stitcher. Give us a 5-star review. That really helps push this content out to more people. We so appreciate you listening. And we have a special guest lined up to talk to you about how to do cash out refinances successfully on our next episode. Stay tuned. Have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jack. Everybody have a beautiful day.